January 1943. 30,000 feet above northern Germany, a formation of B-17 flying fortresses cuts through freezing air. Their engines thunder in unison, echoing across a sky filled with flak bursts, black blossoms of steel and fire. Inside one bomber, the world narrows to a glass nose, a single man, and a secret device. Lieutenant Robert Evans, 23 years old, steadies his breathing. Beneath him lies a world blurred by clouds and smoke. He lowers his head toward the Norden Bombsight, a metal circle of lenses and gyroscopes no bigger than a typewriter, yet capable, they say, of dropping a bomb into a pickle barrel from 5 miles up. The crew trusts him completely. The mission depends on the precision of this one instrument, and the calm hand that guides it. Around him, flak rattles against the fuselage, but inside the glass compartment, there is silence. Numbers align, crosshairs steady. He whispers the words every bombardier knows by heart. Bombs away. The Norden's gyros spin, and history begins to change course. Long before that bomb bay door opened over Germany, the idea of precision bombing was already taking shape in laboratories, workshops, and the restless minds of engineers. The First World War had proven that dropping bombs from the sky was possible, but accuracy was almost non-existent. Pilots relied on crude sights, guesswork, and luck. Cities burned, factories survived, and military planners were left searching for control amid chaos. In the interwar years, America was slow to build its air power, yet a handful of visionaries believed that wars of the future would be decided not by trenches but by altitude. They imagined fleets of heavy bombers striking with surgical precision, crippling enemy industry, while sparing civilians. It was a promise of moral warfare, destruction, but with discipline. At the heart of this vision stood one man, Carl Norden, a Dutch-born engineer who arrived in the United States before the Great War. Norden was meticulous, secretive, and deeply religious. To him, precision was not just a technical challenge, it was a moral one. He despised the idea of indiscriminate bombing and sought to build an instrument that would allow a bombardier to strike only what needed to be destroyed. His obsession would define an era. By the late 1920s, Norden's design began to take shape, using a series of gyroscopes to stabilize the sight and a mechanical computer to calculate trajectory. The device compensated for wind, altitude, and speed. It allowed the bombardier to guide the aircraft toward the release point automatically, ensuring bombs would land closer to their targets than ever before. The Norden Bombsight was more than machinery. It was a symbol of faith in human ingenuity. Tested in secret, guarded under strict classification, it was said to give America the power to wage a cleaner, more ethical war. During demonstrations, officers watched in disbelief as practice bombs landed within yards of their intended targets. The Army Air Corps saw the future in that small glass and steel instrument, and the future looked precise. When the Second World War erupted in Europe in 1939, the United States watched from afar, but its industrial base began preparing for conflict. By the time America entered the war after Pearl Harbor, the Norden Bombsight had become a national treasure. Every unit was hand-assembled under tight security. Bombardiers were sworn to secrecy, pledging to defend the device even with their lives. They were told that if capture was imminent, they must destroy it immediately. In training fields across America, from Texas to Colorado, new crews learned to handle the Norden with reverence. It was locked in safes at night, escorted by armed guards when moved, and unveiled only during flight. To many young men, it felt less like equipment and more like a sacred object. Instructors told them it was the most important invention of the war, that it could decide battles, shorten campaigns, even save lives by making bombing humane. Every American bomber was built around it. The glass nose of the B-17 Flying Fortress and the B-24 Liberator became the bombardier's chapel, with the Norden placed at the center like an altar. Here, under the constant roar of engines, these men learned to trust a machine more than their own eyes. Yet beyond the calm precision of training ranges awaited a sky filled with turbulence, flak, and fear. The ideal of perfect accuracy would soon collide with the reality of combat. As bombers crossed into enemy territory, crosswinds tore at formation lines, visibility vanished behind clouds, and anti-aircraft fire shredded any sense of order. Still, every mission began the same way, with faith. Faith in the aircraft, in the crew, and most of all, in that small device resting beneath the bombardier's hands. And as the war deepened, that faith would be tested across two hemispheres. By the summer of 1942, American bomber groups had begun arriving in Britain. The 8th Air Force was young, ambitious, and determined to prove that daylight precision bombing could cripple Nazi Germany's war machine. Every aircraft carried the same secret core, the Norden Bombsight. To protect its secrecy, the device was never left unattended. Before each mission, armed guards delivered it to the bomber, sealed in a black carrying case. Only the assigned bombardier could unlock it. Inside, its polished metal and glass gleamed like something sacred. Crews treated it with near-religious reverence, believing it could change the course of the war. The United States Army Air Forces had built their doctrine around that belief. Unlike the British Royal Air Force, which favored night bombing to minimize losses, the Americans insisted on precision attacks in daylight. They would strike the heart of Germany's war industry, oil refineries, ball-bearing plants, aircraft factories, and they would do it with mathematical accuracy. The Norden, they believed, would make this possible. To master the device required months of training. At bases like Lowry Field in Colorado, cadets practiced for endless hours, learning to compute airspeed, drift, and altitude, while compensating for winds they could not feel. The bombsight's mechanical brain demanded both patience and intuition. Each man had to synchronize the spinning gyros, steady the aircraft, and calculate the exact moment of release. A trained bombardier could use the Norden to control the plane's course during the final moments of an attack. Once locked onto a target, the bombsight's servo mechanisms automatically adjusted the bomber's flight path, guiding it with uncanny precision. In theory, it could strike a factory window from 6 miles above the ground. But theory seldom survived the battlefield. When the first American raids struck occupied Europe, crews discovered that the sky was no laboratory. Flak disrupted formations, enemy fighters harassed them relentlessly, and shifting winds threw off calculations. Bombs scattered, targets survived, and mission reports often showed accuracy far below expectations. Still, the faith endured. Commanders believed that with better training, more experience, and improved tactics, the Norden's true potential would emerge. To them, precision bombing was not only a strategy, it was a moral distinction. It separated America's campaign from the terror bombings that had devastated London, Rotterdam, and Dresden. The Norden was proof that the United States sought to fight with conscience, as well as power. Each new mission reinforced the belief that technology could overcome chaos. Bombardiers spoke of moments when, despite smoke and flak, the bombsight performed flawlessly when their load fell squarely on a target, and the returning crews celebrated that rare sense of order amid destruction. Those stories spread quickly, feeding the legend. The German High Command, aware of American claims, grew concerned. Reports circulated among Luftwaffe intelligence that the Americans possessed an optical system of extraordinary accuracy. Efforts to capture one failed repeatedly, and even propaganda acknowledged the Norden's mystique. To the Allies, it was a weapon of science. To the Axis, it was an enigma. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, the Norden played a different but equally crucial role. On long-range missions over Japan's far-flung positions, the bombsight helped naval aviators and heavy bomber crews strike island airfields, shipping docks and fuel depots. Though humidity, haze, and distance often degraded its performance, it remained the most trusted instrument on board. By 1943, thousands of young bombardiers had graduated from training schools, each sworn to secrecy and entrusted with one of America's most guarded inventions. For many, the Norden was more than a tool, it was a companion. They cleaned it, calibrated it, and sometimes even spoke to it before missions, as though seeking reassurance. They believed it could make war rational, precise, almost merciful. But the sky had other plans. Ahead lay the brutal test of sustained bombing campaigns, Schweinfurt, Regensburg, and Berlin. In those missions, the limits of man and machine would collide, and only then would the true measure of trust in the Norden be revealed. Inside every bomber, amid the roar of engines and the shaking of metal, sat one man who carried the burden of precision, the bombardier. His seat, isolated in the transparent nose of the aircraft, was the loneliest position in the sky. He could see everything: the clouds, the earth, the targets, and the bursts of anti-aircraft fire blooming all around him. He also knew that in a few moments his decision would send thousands of pounds of explosives hurtling toward the ground. For him, the Norden Bombsight was both a comfort and a weight. Its dials, gyros, and lenses offered the illusion of control in a place where control was rare. Many bombardiers described the feeling of lowering their eyes to the sight, a sudden calm, almost spiritual. The noise of the aircraft faded, the chaos of flak became distant. There was only the target, the crosshairs, and the exact moment when those lines met. Training had drilled one message into every man: the bombsight does not lie, trust it, follow its math, and it will not fail you. Yet each bombardier also knew that one error, a misread altitude, an unexpected wind, or a single second's hesitation, could send the entire mission off course. To the crews, the Norden was more than a tool. It was a promise that precision could justify the destruction they caused, that somewhere within the mechanical hum and calculated angles, there existed a kind of moral clarity. Many veterans later spoke of how that faith sustained them, the belief that they were not destroying blindly, but striking surgically, guided by a device that represented the best of human invention. Mechanically, the Norden Bombsight was a masterpiece of its time. It was a gyro-stabilized optical device, combined with an analog computer, a creation that balanced physics, mathematics, and precision engineering. Inside its compact frame, spinning gyros kept the sight level even as the aircraft pitched and rolled. The bombardier entered altitude, speed, and wind data into its mechanical computer, which calculated the correct bomb release point. Once the bombsight was aligned with the target, it could take partial control of the aircraft through an autopilot system called the Stabilized Bombing Approach Equipment. This integration allowed the Norden to fine-tune the bomber's heading, keeping it perfectly steady during the bombing run. For a brief, tense moment, the bombardier became the true pilot, guiding a flying fortress through the sky with the turn of a small mechanical dial. To the engineers who built it, the Norden was a triumph of American industry. It represented not brute force, but intellect. Unlike the massive artillery pieces or armored tanks that defined land warfare, this was a weapon of calculation and geometry. It embodied the idea that precision could replace sheer destruction. Carl Norden himself was deeply proud of this vision. He saw his invention not as a device of killing, but as a means to end war more humanely, by striking only those targets that sustained the enemy's ability to fight. He once said that his goal was to make bombing as accurate as artillery. In his mind, accuracy was morality. But the reality of war rarely matched the purity of design. The bombsight's performance depended on conditions that almost never existed in combat. Turbulence, high winds, smoke, and stress turned perfect equations into uncertain guesses. Still, crews continued to believe in it, because belief itself became part of its power. At the highest levels of the United States Army Air Forces, the Norden Bombsight was more than technology, it was doctrine. Generals like Henry Hap, Arnold, and Ira Eaker built entire strategies around it. They argued that precision daylight bombing could destroy the enemy's industrial heart without resorting to terror raids against civilians. This approach set America apart from its British allies. While Air Chief Marshal Arthur Harris and the Royal Air Force accepted the grim necessity of night area bombing, the Americans insisted on daylight operations guided by accuracy. They saw it as a moral mission, to prove that democracy could fight without losing its conscience. The Norden was the instrument of that faith. Military planners promised that bombers armed with it could hit within a few hundred feet of any target, regardless of weather or distance. Propaganda echoed this confidence, portraying the bombsight as a wonder of science, a device so secret that it was said to be worth more than its weight in gold. Crews were reminded constantly that they held the key to victory. Their training films described the Norden as the heart of precision bombing. It was treated almost like a national secret weapon, one that would justify the enormous risks of flying unescorted daylight missions deep into enemy territory. For the men who led those missions, the bombsight became both shield and symbol. It shielded them from moral doubt because it promised control, and it symbolized progress. The idea that technology could make warfare rational, efficient, even ethical. Yet, as losses mounted and accuracy often fell short of expectations, commanders faced a difficult truth. Faith in a machine could inspire courage, but it could not bend the laws of nature or erase the human factor. Still, they kept believing, because the alternative was far darker. And on the other side of the war, the enemies of the United States were watching closely, wondering what secret lay within that mysterious glass instrument guiding the bombers overhead. To German and Japanese observers, the Norden Bombsight quickly became a symbol of American precision and arrogance. Rumors about its capabilities spread through intelligence channels. Captured airmen spoke of a device so advanced that it could strike a single building from miles away. Nazi propaganda mocked this claim publicly, but privately, German engineers took it seriously. The Luftwaffe's technical branches made repeated attempts to capture an intact Norden. Crashed bombers were scoured for fragments of the device. In 1943, after several raids over France and the Netherlands, German recovery teams found partial components, lenses, gears, fragments of casing, but never the complete system. What they saw confirmed their fears. The Allies had developed a bombsight far superior to their own Lotfed series. In the Pacific, Japanese forces also recognized its value. During the early raids against the Philippines, attempts were made to recover Norden bombsights from downed B-17s, but few survived the crashes. American crews, trained from day one to protect the site above all else, destroyed it whenever possible, often by smashing or shooting it before bailing out. To the enemy, the Norden represented more than a technical edge. It embodied the industrial and scientific depth of the United States, a nation capable of blending mathematics, engineering, and mass production into a single instrument of war. The Axis powers might have excelled in aircraft design or tactics, but few could match the scale and secrecy of American innovation. Behind the cold precision of bombing tables and mission reports, a deeper question lingered: could technology make war humane? The Norden was supposed to answer yes. It promised accuracy so refined that civilian casualties would be minimal. It was, in theory, a tool of restraint. But war is rarely merciful. In practice, the chaos of weather, enemy fire, and human error ensured that even with the Norden, bombs often missed their targets by hundreds or thousands of feet. Factories stood while nearby neighborhoods burned. Despite this, commanders clung to the narrative of precision. It was easier to believe that war could be conducted with moral boundaries if those boundaries were reinforced by machinery. Some airmen struggled with that contradiction. They saw firsthand the destruction below, columns of smoke rising from cities, not just factories. The bombsight might have promised precision, but its view ended at the release point. Once the bombs fell, gravity decided the rest. The idea of precision bombing became a moral comfort in an increasingly total war. It allowed those fighting to see their missions as just, targeted, and necessary. The Norden was at the heart of that illusion, or perhaps that hope. For Carl Norden himself, the knowledge that his invention was being used to devastate entire cities weighed heavily. He had designed it to avoid such outcomes. After the war, he rarely spoke about his creation, and when he did, his words were tinged with sorrow. The bombsight that had been meant to make bombing more humane had, in practice, become a symbol of the opposite. Within the bomber crews, the Norden created a powerful psychological bond between man and machine. The bombardiers' trust in the sight became almost ritualistic. Before missions, they would check every screw, polish every lens, and calibrate every gyro with devotion. It gave them something tangible to rely on in a world of uncertainty. This trust was not just technical, it was emotional. To sit inside a vibrating, freezing aircraft, thousands of feet above enemy territory, knowing that one miscalculation could mean death, was to exist in constant tension. The bombsight offered a form of focus, a way to channel fear into precision. Its glowing dials and steady crosshairs gave the bombardier something the sky could not: stability. Veterans later described how they would mentally isolate themselves during bombing runs. They tuned out the intercom chatter, the shouts from the pilot, the explosions outside. There was only the target, framed perfectly in the crosshairs. It was as if the world reduced itself to geometry, a quiet, ordered space where numbers could defeat chaos. Psychologists studying bomber crews after the war noted how essential that sense of control was to survival. The Norden Bombsight provided the illusion that the impossible task of aerial warfare could be governed by reason. In that illusion lay a strange comfort. Yet for all its stability, the bombsight could not ease the trauma of what followed. Bombardiers carried vivid memories of their missions, the trembling of the aircraft, the shudder when bombs released, and the distant flash below. They never saw the people beneath the targets, but they knew what those flashes meant. Many would live with that knowledge for the rest of their lives. The Norden gave them accuracy, but not absolution. And as the war intensified, the line between precision and destruction blurred even further. The next stage would reveal both the triumph and the tragedy of that faith, as the skies over Europe and Japan became the final testing ground for the most trusted device of the American war effort. The true test of the Norden Bombsight came in the summer of 1943, when the United States Army Air Forces launched one of their most ambitious daylight operations, the twin strikes against Regensburg and Schweinfurt. These raids targeted Germany's aircraft production and ball-bearing industries, the mechanical heart of the Luftwaffe. Precision, not numbers, would decide their success. Before dawn on August 17th, hundreds of B-17 flying fortresses lined the airfields of England. Engines roared to life, condensation streaming from exhausts as crews ran through final checks. In the glass noses of each bomber, the Norden Bombsight was mounted and armed. The bombardiers leaned close, checking the alignment of the crosshairs, ensuring that the gyros spun freely. The mission briefing had emphasized one point: accuracy was everything. The formation climbed into clear morning skies, heading east over the North Sea. For hours they flew in tight groups, engines droning in rhythmic harmony. The sun glinted off polished aluminum, a formation of precision machines moving toward the industrial core of Nazi Germany. Then came the flak. Over Western Germany, black clouds of anti-aircraft fire erupted around the bombers. Each burst sent shrapnel slicing through the air, rocking the formations. German fighters struck soon after, waves of Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs slashing through the defensive rings of B-17s. The bombers pressed on, their paths marked by smoke and fire. Inside the lead aircraft, the bombardier took control for the final run. Through the Norden's eyepiece, the factory at Regensburg appeared as a small shape on the landscape far below. He steadied the image, aligned the crosshairs, and adjusted the drift knob with trembling fingers. The flak burst seemed distant now, the world reduced to numbers and motion. The gyro stabilized, the crosshairs held. Bombs away. The bombs fell, sleek, silver shapes vanishing into the haze. Seconds later, the ground below erupted in orange flame. Later reconnaissance photographs confirmed direct hits on the Messerschmitt assembly plant. The Norden had done its job. But the cost was staggering. Half the formation never returned. Those that did were riddled with holes, engines crippled, crews wounded or dead. In Schweinfurt, the results were mixed. Some bombs struck their targets precisely. Many others scattered wide. The promise of machine-perfect accuracy had again collided with the chaos of war. Still, American commanders hailed the operation as proof that precision bombing could succeed. They saw in it the validation of years of faith, that a small mechanical device, guided by disciplined hands, could shape the outcome of a global conflict. Throughout 1944, that belief drove the air war deeper into Germany. Raids against oil refineries, submarine pens, and aircraft factories continued relentlessly. The Norden Bombsight became the focal point of every mission, the moment when human decision met mechanical calculation. Over Merseburg, over Leipzig, over Berlin, the same ritual repeated. The bombardier's calm voice, the tension of the approach, the countdown, and then the quiet release. In every mission debrief, commanders studied the strike photos, measuring accuracy, evaluating patterns. They understood that even a few hundred feet could decide whether a target was destroyed or untouched. And though reports revealed inconsistencies, bombs scattered by weather, by flak, by the limits of visibility, the idea of precision remained central. To question it was to question the very strategy of the war. By late 1944, the Norden had become more than an instrument, it was an emblem of American air power itself. The air forces even used it in public demonstrations back home, showing newsreel audiences its supposed ability to hit a target the size of a pickle barrel from miles above the earth. Civilians believed it. Crews wanted to believe it. Yet above Europe, the truth was written in smoke. Cities like Hamburg, Cologne, and Dresden burned under the combined weight of British and American bombing. Despite the Norden's promise of precision, total war had erased the line between tactical necessity and mass destruction. Still, the bombers flew on. They had no choice. The device might not have been perfect, but it was the best they had, and for those men in the sky, that small machine represented the only form of control they could cling to, amid the storm. As the war neared its final year, the Norden would follow the bombers eastward toward Japan, where its accuracy would again be tested on a new and unforgiving battlefield. By early 1945, the war in Europe was grinding toward its end, and the skies over the Pacific had become the next proving ground for the Norden Bombsight. The weapon that once guided B-17s over Germany now sat inside the noses of B-29s, the largest, most advanced bombers ever built. From the volcanic airfields of the Mariana Islands, the 20th Air Force launched massive raids against Japan. Their mission: destroy the empire's industrial capacity and force surrender. The Norden Bombsight was still there, clamped to its mount, glowing faintly under the red cabin lights. But the conditions it faced were far different from Europe's clear skies. Over Japan, the weather was merciless. Jet streams howled across the islands at speeds no one had encountered before, 200 miles per hour winds that twisted formations and sent bombs drifting far off target. Clouds and haze obscured nearly every objective. For the first time, even the most skilled bombardiers could not trust the readings before them. The crosshairs would not steady. The targets vanished into the mist. Brigadier General Haywood Hansell, commander of the strategic bombing effort, still believed in the Norden. He ordered high-altitude precision raids on Japan's aircraft plants and engine factories, convinced that disciplined use of the bombsight would cripple enemy production. But mission after mission proved disastrous. Bombs scattered across wide areas, missing intended targets entirely. The Japanese war machine endured. In early 1945, Hansell was replaced by General Curtis LeMay, a man far less patient with theory. LeMay had no illusions about perfection. He understood that technology alone could not overcome nature. His solution was brutal: abandon high-altitude precision bombing altogether. Instead, LeMay ordered low-level, nighttime incendiary raids. The Norden remained in the bombers, but it was no longer the guiding hand of strategy. The promise of pinpoint accuracy gave way to the grim practicality of saturation bombing. On the night of March 9, 1945, LeMay's new doctrine was unleashed. More than 300 B-29s roared into the skies over Tokyo, stripped of most defensive armament to carry heavier bomb loads. They flew low, beneath the clouds, without relying on the Norden. Their target: the wooden, densely populated heart of the city. From 2,000 feet, the first wave dropped incendiaries. Within minutes, Tokyo was an ocean of fire. Winds fed the flames, turning neighborhoods into furnaces. Tens of thousands perished in a single night. The Norden Bombsight, once guarded as America's most sacred technological treasure, sat unused in those aircraft, silent, irrelevant. Its purpose had been precision, yet war had moved beyond the realm of precision entirely. And yet, in a tragic paradox, it was still the Norden's legacy that made those bombers possible. Its very development, the obsession with accuracy, the faith in engineering, had advanced American aviation to a level where total destruction could now be delivered with efficiency. A few months later, as the war approached its closing act, the Norden would find itself pointed at Japan once again, this time on the B-29s Enola Gay and Bockscar. Though radar and visual aiming dominated those missions, the Norden Bombsight was still part of the bombing system that released the atomic bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In those moments, the line between precision and annihilation vanished completely. The bombs fell not on factories or airfields, but on entire cities. The device built to make bombing moral had become part of humanity's most devastating act. Afterward, when the reports reached the engineers, some were silent. Others, like Carl Norden himself, withdrew from the public eye. He had dreamed of precision saving lives, not destroying them. But in the machinery of war, dreams rarely survive contact with reality. As Japan surrendered and the world stepped out from the ruins, the Norden Bombsight remained both a triumph and a contradiction, a marvel of science, and a monument to the limits of faith in technology. Its gyros had guided countless missions. Its lenses had framed the most destructive views in history, and for the men who once trusted it more than anything else, it would forever symbolize the fragile balance between precision and devastation, between belief and truth. The war was ending, but the questions it raised about technology, morality, and the human need for control would never truly fade. When peace returned in 1945, the Norden Bombsight was no longer a secret. Thousands of units sat unused in depots, their gyros still humming faintly when powered on, their glass lenses reflecting the same light that once shone above Europe and the Pacific. For years, it had been the most closely guarded invention of the United States military. Now it was a relic of a war that had moved beyond precision. In the weeks after the Japanese surrender, bomb groups began to stand down. Airfields that had once launched daily missions grew quiet. Crews dismantled and packed away their bomb sites, often with mixed feelings. Some kept the small sighting eyepiece as a souvenir. Others simply turned the dials one last time and walked away. They had trusted this device with their lives, and though it had never lived up to its mythic perfection, it had been a companion in the skies. Official evaluations soon followed. The United States Army Air Forces conducted studies to determine the true effectiveness of the Norden system. The results were sobering. Under combat conditions, average bombing accuracy had been far less than expected, often with bomb patterns falling thousands of feet from the aim point. Wind, visibility, and the human factor had proven stronger than any mechanical correction. But numbers told only part of the story. The bombsight's value went beyond precision. It had provided focus, confidence, and purpose to men who needed all three. It had given the illusion that chaos could be measured, that destruction could be controlled. For that alone, it had justified its place in the cockpit. In public, the Norden's legend grew instead of fading. War films, newsreels, and newspaper articles praised it as the device that had won the air war. Few mentioned its flaws. To a nation exhausted by years of sacrifice, the myth of perfect accuracy was comforting. It allowed Americans to believe that their bombing campaign had been guided by conscience as much as by firepower. The government encouraged that belief. In 1946, portions of the Norden's design were declassified. Demonstrations were held for the press, showing how the sight worked. Audiences watched as instructors used the bombsight to hit small targets during test flights. Reporters wrote glowing articles about the miracle machine that had guided the Allies to victory. Carl Norden, now an elderly man, lived quietly in Connecticut. He refused most interviews. To him, the device had never been about glory. He was proud of its engineering, but he carried deep unease about its use. When asked about its role in the atomic missions, he deflected, saying only that he had built it to save lives, not take them. Meanwhile, engineers and scientists who had worked on the bombsight moved on to new projects. The war had accelerated the development of computing, electronics, and guidance systems. The Norden's analog gears would soon be replaced by circuits, radar, and eventually digital systems. The age of mechanical precision was ending, giving way to the age of electronic control. Yet for the men who had relied on it, the Norden never truly disappeared. Veterans spoke of it with a strange affection. Some remembered how its quiet hum calmed them during the final moments before release. Others could still feel the motion of its gyros, the subtle vibration that signaled the bombsight was alive. It had not made bombing humane, but it had given the illusion of humanity in a war that often seemed to strip it away. That paradox became its legacy, the faith that man could master destruction through calculation. And as the world rebuilt, that faith would be tested again, in new wars, new skies, and new generations of bombers that carried the same dream of precision into a new era. By the early 1950s, the once secret Norden Bombsight was already obsolete. Jet bombers flying higher and faster demanded new systems that could account for speed, altitude, and radar guidance far beyond what a human hand could manage. The future belonged to electronics, but the principles born from the Norden's gyros would remain in every automatic pilot, every missile guidance computer, and every laser targeting system to come. Still, the old device did not vanish quietly. Thousands of Norden bombsights were sold as surplus, their intricate mechanisms dismantled for scrap. Some ended up in museums, others in aviation schools as training aids. A few were kept by former airmen who could not bear to let them go. Decades later, when those veterans spoke of their missions, they spoke of the bombsight almost as a living thing, an instrument of faith in an age of uncertainty. The stories told by these men reveal a more human truth than any report or statistic. They remembered how the bombsight gave them a sense of control, even when chaos surrounded them. It was not simply a piece of equipment, it was a symbol of their belief that precision could bring morality to warfare. They did not want to destroy blindly, they wanted to aim, to strike only what needed to be struck. In that belief, the Norden became a paradox of its time. It promised surgical precision in an era of mass destruction. It reassured the crews that they were different from the enemy, that their war was guided by science and discipline, not vengeance. Whether that was ever true hardly mattered. What mattered was that they believed it. Historians later debated its legacy. Some argued that the Norden had failed its mission, that it could never achieve the accuracy claimed. Others said its true value lay not in results but in intent. It represented humanity's effort to make war less brutal through reason and engineering. The device was both a triumph of design and a mirror of moral conflict. In the broader story of aviation, it marked a turning point. Before the Norden, bombing had been guesswork. After it, precision became a goal, and eventually, an obsession. Every nation that entered the jet and missile age carried forward the same pursuit of accuracy. From radar-guided bombs in Korea to smart munitions in Vietnam, the dream of hitting only the target and sparing everything else began here, in the glass nose of a flying fortress. Carl Norden died in 1965, having lived long enough to see the age of the computer dawn. In the years following his death, the US Air Force quietly removed the last Norden units from service. The device that once embodied the highest form of wartime secrecy now sat behind museum glass, its gears frozen, its lenses still clear. For many who visited those displays, former bombardiers, pilots, and mechanics, seeing it again was like meeting an old comrade. They would lean close, peer through the eyepiece, and remember the long hours above the clouds, the cold, the fear, and the strange serenity of trusting one machine completely. It is easy now to see the Norden as an artifact, but in its time, it represented something far greater, the human desire to impose precision on the uncontrollable, to find order in destruction. It taught generations of airmen that technology could be both a weapon and a moral compass. In that sense, its story did not end with the Second World War. Every guided bomb, every satellite navigation system, and every drone strike owes a fragment of its lineage to that mechanical eye that once looked down on Europe and the Pacific. And though its time has passed, the question it raised still echoes through every era of modern warfare: can precision ever make destruction just? The Norden bombsight stands today as both a marvel and a mirror, a reminder of what happens when human ingenuity meets the terrible necessity of war. It was designed to make bombing more precise, more ethical, more controlled. Yet in practice, it revealed how thin that boundary truly is between precision and devastation. Its creators believed they were giving pilots and bombardiers the means to fight a cleaner war. Its users believed it gave them moral clarity, that through calculation and control, they could strike only what mattered. But the skies of Europe and the Pacific told a different story. Even with its gyros humming and crosshairs steady, war remained imprecise, chaotic, and deeply human. Still, the Norden changed something fundamental. It transformed bombing from an art of instinct into a science of mathematics and engineering. It laid the groundwork for the technological lineage that would define the next century, from radar navigation to computer guidance to satellites orbiting the Earth. Every act of precision that followed owes a quiet debt to the engineers who sought perfection through spinning gyros and glass optics. Perhaps that is the true legacy of the Norden Bombsight, not its success or failure in battle, but its reflection of humanity's endless struggle to control what cannot be controlled. It represents our belief that reason can tame violence, that calculation can purify chaos. But as every bombardier eventually learned, looking through that glass was like looking into the heart of war itself. The target might be a bridge or a factory, yet beyond it lay something no lens could measure: lives, choices, and consequences far beyond the reach of mathematics. And so the Norden remains more than an invention. It is a symbol of the uneasy marriage between morality and machinery, a silent witness to an age when men trusted precision to bring them peace, only to learn that true precision was never mechanical at all.